And we on. What's good, y'all? Okay. So, I'm going to wait for our guest of the hour to arrive. I just wanted to kind of get things started before we started. You know how we do. So this is the Life is a Freestyle movement, and we're waiting for our guest to come on to discuss what freestyle means to them. And to give a little bit of background here, I'm going to take the mask off because I'm indoors. I took my punk ass in the house. So what we're doing is we are trying to establish what it is that everybody is doing as we work through this. I don't want to call it quarantine because that's the wrong word, but the lockdown, right? The curfew and all this other stuff that people have in place in different parts of the world to prevent people from getting out and experiencing life outdoors. We are trying to get people to discuss what it is that we are doing to get through that, because honestly, everybody's doing it differently. Everybody has a different way of going about it. Everybody's got different responsibilities. Everybody has different priorities. And so as we begin this promptly at 4:30 on Pacific time, 4:30 p.m. today, which is a minute from now, actually 35 seconds from now, we are just a group of people that are associated with the Society of Spoken Art. We're talking about freestyle from a rapper perspective, but as it pertains to all aspects of life. So, here we go. We're looking for GREGNWMN, my IT. So we're just gonna get him on here. What up, T.I.T.? I see you. I see you, homeboy. All right. So as we continue, I want to give a little background on me. So my name is it's soon to be known All-Star, but you can call me Stuby Kas. A lot of people say Stubby, but there's nothing stubby about me. I'm kind of a skinny, lanky dude or whatever. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I go by soon to be known All-Star. You can call me IT, right? You can't call me IT actually. You, T.I.T. can call me because you in the chat. But yeah. I'm a rapper, but I'm more of a lot of different things than I am just one. So being a rapper is one of my talents and skill sets, and so I kind of freestyle my way through things in terms of conversation and in terms of the way that I think about things. Somebody recently told me like, yo, the way your mind works is just crazy, because like the things that you associate with other things I would never imagine in a million years. And that's part of freestyle, right? Is being able to pull from different places to say, hey, it's crazy that somebody would connect these two things that have never been connected before. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the whole point, is to find those wow moments. And when you're connecting these things, you are connecting them with the intent of creating something beautiful. In the case of life and us being cooped up in a house right now, create something beautiful about being cooped up in a house, right? So if it's making art, creating something, or if it's just having a conversation with your family that maybe you have never had a chance to have a conversation with them about. All these things are, definitely aspects and elements to freestyle. Freestyle executes itself in many different ways. It's pretty much ever present. So we're going to get into a little bit more of the conversation. What's up, Momo IT? I see you. We're just waiting for Greg IT to jump on so we can begin this discussion. I have a couple of talking points if he doesn't already have things that he wants to discuss, but I'm going to be asking him a couple of questions. So, yeah. Meanwhile, we will see how this turns out. This is the first ever episode. Can y'all hear me all right? Let me know in the chat if y'all can hear me okay. You know what I'm saying? I'll do what I can to change the sound up a little bit if I have to. But let me see if I can grab the homie here. Oops. Oh, really? Interesting. Audio crispy. Thumbs up. That's what I'm talking about. There we go. Okay. So, I had the mask on, made my face sweaty. It's funny, when you're outside, you got the mask on, you breathing hot air into your face. You end up creating more moisture around the area that the mask is on, right? And then when you take the mask off, the first thing you want to do is wipe all the sweat and the condensation and the moisture off of your face. And they say, don't touch your face. And that's the whole point of putting the mask on. As soon as you take it off, I was just like, ah. So, you know, it is what it is. Let me get the bro in here. For some reason, my keyboard is typing twice every time I push a key. That's weird. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. I don't know what's going on. I think I might have messed with the options, but we gonna work through it. We gonna work through it. It's not a thing. Not a thing whatsoever. All right, so I'm on the West Coast. All right, it's 4 p.m., 4:30 out here, and it's sunny. You know what I'm saying? I'll give y'all a little brief tour of the outdoors. Sorry for the dirtiness of the windows, but you know, they're double pane windows. You can't really do nothing about that. You know what I'm saying? On the outside, unless you want to go outside and clean them suckers. And you know, as the saying goes, I don't do windows. So, but maybe I should. Maybe I should step out into the little dirty grassy area and just go outside and wash the windows out. I don't know. Whatever. We'll see. But that's outside. That's the outside, right? That's where we're not supposed to go. It's funny how that works, right? All right, we got the homie in, and we are bringing him on now. GREGNWMN. Now we mirror nature. What's going on?
What's going on? What's going on with you, man?
Yo, man, we doing this live and in person.
Yeah, live and direct, bro. We're here, man. We're here.
Right.
How's your day going?
It's going well, man. You know what I'm saying? I was just giving people for the later download, you know what I'm saying, a little bit of a preface as to what's going on and why we're doing this. What's going on, Joe Kiss Santos and Mighty Fredo or Frito. I don't want to mispronounce the names, but I'm glad we got people jumping in already. That's big. So I was just kind of giving people a rundown of, you know, this idea of freestyle being kind of a multifaceted kind of concept that we can kind of utilize in different aspects of our lives. And right now, a lot of people are kind of being pushed into a corner that they have never been pushed into before. It is extremely new and you know, uncharted territory for a lot of people.
Right.
And so it's time for us to maybe have a discussion about freestyle. Because as rappers, this is what we do when we get backed into a corner. It's like, yo, you got some bars? It's like, oh, snap. Yeah. You know
Yeah, 100%.
Pull something. You either got to pull something from what you already know, or you have to just go at the top. And you don't really necessarily lose either way, as long as you actually do what you're asked to do. So what we're being asked to do right now is stay in the house. Take and keep our punk asses in the house. That's what we're
saying, man. Listen, man, I'm trying, man. You know, I got my mask right
here. You know what I'm saying? I started the stream with it. You know what I'm saying? So you're gonna see that at the beginning on IGTV. But check this out.
100%.
So we talk about, you know, being kind of caged animals in this particular situation because all of nature is outside of my dirty windows here.
Right.
But you know, and the squirrels and the birds and the bees out there running around scampering, and they ain't got to worry about coronavirus. They're able to do what they need to do when they need to do it. And sometimes you gotta, you know, figure it out off the top of their head because that's nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for us, what is our nature? What is our nature? Your part of your artist name includes the concept of nature, right? So what is our nature when we are apparently these trapped and caged animals and within our own homes? How do we become, you know, whatever it is that our personal natures are kind of destined to become while we are not able to move, right? So
Right.
Well, what it is that you're doing right now that is kind of helping you in terms of coming up with something new, or you know, whether it's meditation or whether it's, you know, reading, research, whether it's all these different things that you could be doing to kind of like adapt and adjust, because that's really what freestyle is about, is being adaptable, being adjustable, being, you know, able to kind of, you know, improv your way through the situation that maybe you didn't expect to see yourself in. 6 months ago, none of us would have expected to have to be in a house every day with no toilet paper in the grocery stores and lines wrapping around the banks because people got to figure out how to get their money and whether or not money is even going to be a thing anymore. Is this the end of the world? Da, 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 da. So how are you dealing with this? Because you're a rapper, and so you have to stand in front of people and spit. You literally have to spit at them. Spit, 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 right?
Yeah.
That's like the scariest thing for people right now, right?
Right.
So how do you, as an artist, stay at home and make it so that you can really, what's up, Mal IT? I see you. Molly, see you.
Yeah, we got some people in here. First of all, hey, shouts out to everybody who's tapping into this real quick. This you know, this is a great platform to kind of highlight different topics regarding to how we approach our process in our specific disciplines. There's freestyling in all elements of life, right? And I'm gonna round out and attack your question as well. But there's aspects of freestyling in any and all things. So I think it's a very beautiful thing to take this Life as a Freestyle platform and then use it as basically a springboard to be able to say, as a writer, as a dancer, as a business person, there's small decisions that we make every single day that are micro decisions that aren't necessarily expected and not necessarily preemptive. Not everything in life is planned. So the premise is, when things don't go according to plan, it really shows you and reveals to you who you really are. And it also reveals who the people around you are. So we find ourselves in a situation, to allude back to what you were mentioning before, is, do we all anticipate that we be in a situation now where we have to solely rely on streams or over the web calls or FaceTime or any of these things that everyone's utilizing in their own unique way? The answer is no. So what we're kind of faced with now is we're faced with a level of everyone's emotions of the people that we know are the most real and raw emotions that we're experiencing, because the freestyle provokes the fight and flight response in our mind. So I can only speak in the context of my perspective, but when it comes to actually being a vocalist, when it comes to being on stage, and when it comes to even presenting yourself on an internet stage, right? Freestyling to other people.
World stage.
Right. Yeah, the world stage. When it comes to freestyling in front of people, there are these fight and flight responses that you would normally get through some sort of physical matter also happening within your mind. So I think it's a very special thing for us to be able to highlight those things. And in the context of nature, we, at least my perspective, I feel as though we are constant reflections of all our experiences. So the things that we've gone through in life, we constantly look at the things that we've gone through in life, and we balance those things we've gone through in life against our own character and who we are and our interests and the things we're not interested in. So I've taken the premise of Now We Mirror Nature, which is an acronym, to use it as the basis of how you actually pronounce my last name, which is Newman, and then took the vowels out and then put my front name on top of there. So that's where GREGNWMN comes from.
Africans have done in the past, yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So Greg, now we mirror nature, but GREGNWMN, I appreciate that, bro. So that's the premise of it. And the idea is that nature, at least from my perspective, nature is the first artist.
Yeah.
Nature is the first freestyler.
That's right.
To ever have lived.
And it depends on whether you know, like, it's not so that it doesn't depend, but it's like depending on what you call nature, because some people will call it God, some people will call it the universe, some people will call it nature, some people will call it life force, you know, the force. There's all these things out there, right? Regardless of what it is, whatever's outside of my dirty windows is art by itself, without any human interference whatsoever. We look at that and we see beauty. We see.
Well, what's interesting about that point is there's multiple different types of nature as well. There's environmental nature. There's literally an ecosystem out there. There's an ecosystem in here, but there's the biological nature of the way that we work, right? And then there's also the emotional human nature that we have that really is, all these variables are coming into one very complex formula, and we're having to freestyle through life to be able to say, in this situation, what should I do that's going to yield the most optimal result for me? So I think coming from the perspective of a vocalist, or coming from the perspective of a rapper, coming from the perspective of a writer, and just as a human being, the idea is I want to take some time to increase what my baseline is and increase what I deem to be normal. So when things get extremely difficult and I need a higher level of critical analysis to be able to move through life, I can make the highest tier decisions I possibly can make, so that moving normally for me is a high level to other people. And that's the idea, you know. It doesn't necessarily, that's all perspective, you know what I mean? But that's the way I would necessarily approach it. So explain to me a little bit more about like what Life is a Freestyle about. Like, what is this platform more so about? And I'm excited to also, if y'all have any questions as to what Life is a Freestyle is, or even drop your craft in the comments and let us know, like, what do you do? You know, and we're kind of interested in that as well. So
yeah, I mean, you know, the human body, and by body I mean like body of work, body of people.
That's a bar. That's a bar. Right? See you spitting now. You spitting now.
The human body is made up of so many different cells, and I'm going to keep with the metaphor because I love metaphors. You know, cells of individuals, right? Individuals being groups of people or families or, you know, societies across the world, right? These are cells that make up the entire civilization that I'm calling the human body, right? The body of work that we have. So when we say, you know, life is a freestyle, the reason we say that is because we know that there are as many different ways to do a thing as there are people to do it.
Right.
And we, you know, there's a certain level of rigidity that people like to kind of operate on, which is breaking right now. And that's why this is an extremely timely conversation to have, because the structure of the system that we believe we are rigidly kind of adhered to is breaking in front of us. And we are having to figure out, well, you know, I can't get the toilet paper from this grocery store, so what am I going to do? I guess maybe I'll buy the napkins and figure it out, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. So everybody's kind of scrambling. You can call it a certain level of panic, maybe a controlled panic, maybe a slow panic, a slow burn, whatever you want to call it. It's definitely something where, you know, we want to kind of tap into what is the nature of freestyle, because freestyle kind of pervades throughout all the different types of nature that you're talking about. You know, you got the human nature, which is inside the mind, inside the behavioral systems that we have.
Right,
then you have the nature, the you know, the botanical, you know, biological nature of the outside ecosystem.
Right.
And then you have, you know, the nature of business. What is the nature of business? Well, I need a thing, you have the thing. Will you give it to me for free. No, well, what do I have of value that I can trade with you, barter or what have you? So that's the nature of business, is equal exchange, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we look at freestyle, but freestyle kind of pervades throughout all of those different types of nature, because you can run a business by, you know, putting together masks and going out on the corner and selling them for $5 a pop. That's freestyling. You hustling.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. And it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up, because to allude back to what we were mentioning before, when it comes to, there's certain pieces of what a freestyle is a negotiation.
Yeah.
In my mind. So not only on the business aspect, but think about it in terms of when you're watching your favorite artist, you're watching your favorite rapper, you're watching, even, it doesn't matter what genre really. So you have someone who's playing a guitar and they call it jamming, right? So there's this negotiation with time signatures and something very concrete, which is language, which is actually really concrete, right? And really very tactilic in a way. And so you find something that is very rigid and something that's very open, such as melodies and things like that. Time measures are also kind of rigid, but music exists and flows within this thing. And it's a negotiation of, how do I want this song to sound? Right. And then also, what chords am I using to complement what I'm saying? And then there's a negotiation with that, with which melody fuses with this. And so you find that when you watch, to bring it back to hip hop, you find that when a beat comes on, immediately the mind goes to, you know, what kind of flow is going to sound the best here? You know, would using a 3 to 4 syllable word here really, what am I trying to display here? That I know words, or that the words I'm going to use are the best words to flow into the point that I'm trying to convey? So there's this negotiation all of a sudden between the rapper and the beat. Yeah. Right. You know, and so much
how fast does that happen for you if you're freestyling, or if you're writing, or if you're performing? How fast, let's say in the middle of a performance, it happens to the best of us, you maybe forget or trip over a word. How do you, in your mind, and is it practice or is it freestyle, where you figure out how to make that negotiation with yourself, the beat, and the crowd, the DJ, everybody in the room? Like, yo, everybody doesn't know that I tripped. Everybody doesn't know that I messed up. But like, how do I make it seem as though I didn't? And not only that, but how do I keep it pushing to the next line or to the next verse and what have you? So like, how long does it take to make that kind of micro decision of making that negotiation with all those different factors at the same time?
Right. Well, I mean, what you're explaining is something extremely complicated that I think a lot of people really overlook, because it's this natural thing that we do, obviously. But for me personally, what I notice is that the more that I constantly beat on repetition and iteration, there's a constant iteration of, and this is what I lay out my plan, and I say, look, if everything doesn't go according to plan, or something doesn't go according to plan, which I can't see what's coming, right? No one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to drive and get in an accident today, right? But that's why you have insurance, right? So we create these levels of contingency in our mind, these backup plans, right? Where it's like, if this happens, this is the way I'm going to approach it. So what I personally do is I iterate. If I find myself in a space where I slip, the level that I can recover, the quickness that I can recover is more important than the actual slip itself. Because the thing that the slip even shows is that some people will see, wow, you made a mistake. That actually makes you more human, which puts a drop in the human nature pool. And it puts a drop in the relatability pool when it comes to your actual performance. Because in reality, everyone subtly and psychologically knows that no one is perfect, right? So there's never going to be a perfect program. There's never going to be a perfect implementation or iteration of anything. But provided that I can go through hundreds of iterations, or come up with at least a dozen ways of, man, this is how this show is going to be messed up. Like if I go to a show, a good example of this was, I opened up for a show with an artist named Mick Jenkins, right? And And I found myself in a position where the stages I had performed on beforehand, right, were all of a certain size. Because, you know, you're going through, and depending upon the size of the venue, you know, you're only used to a certain level of space to be able to do your thing and perform.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm getting prepped for the show, and then the set starts, and I go up to begin the set. And the immediate thing I realize, because I kind of have more of an amped live presence that is very commanding when it comes to actual, when it comes to like physical bodily output. And so what's most important, what's up, what's popping, we got ITs in here. So the thing is that I found myself in a position when I grabbed this mic that I stepped out and I realized the real estate of the stage was much larger than I had initially anticipated. And
so you're thinking about all the energy that you got to put out on all the different parts of the stage.
So immediately I'm thinking, okay, as opposed to this amount of degrees, I have to now deal with 180, almost 180 degrees of people whom would like to be entertained. Right. So then immediately within the first couple seconds of me having this grand plan to destroy this set, you know, immediately I was introduced with something wrong. Right. Or not, maybe not something wrong, but it's an obstacle.
Some problem to solve. Yeah.
Something that was like this I was not prepared for. Right. And so then on top of that, it's the aesthetic of sequencing. How am I going to sequence this set? How am I going to put myself on display? And there's a lot of different pieces that go into that. And that's why a lot of people go through rehearsal, which is a level of this iteration that we're talking about, which is how many times can we go over the plan and come up with backup plans if you miss a chord, if you skip the drop and you're a DJ and you mess up in some way, how can we recover in a way that's the most efficient? And that's where I found myself in a position when I was performing at that show. First thing is, how do I optimize my real estate? And I chose to compensate in that moment with slowing everything I was doing down vocally and making sure that instead being heard and being resonant was more important, and slowing my movements down. So what was interesting about that is that when the resonance of the voice and the tonality, pitch, gain changed, then more people were able to hear what I was saying. And on top of that, I was able to spread the appreciation of what was being said in that moment. So that small micro decision, which would be otherwise known as a freestyle in that moment, because that definitely wasn't planned, ended up working out. You know, so that was just one example of how it could be really milliseconds where something goes wrong. But because having discussions with my DJ, having discussions with people throughout previous shows, and asking them how the performance was, and understanding, okay, in this smaller space I can do X, in this larger space I can do Y, and kind of gauging and finding an average and finding, hey, these are the points in the scatter plot of me performing, and here's the best fit line of what I can kind of expect. And sometimes I'm going to hit above that line, and sometimes I'm going to hit below that line. But it's different for everybody, because at the same time, think about other people's position outside of the vocalist. So during that set, there might have been a period of time when I broke into an acapella to address the crowd. And so now my DJ is looking like, I need to wait to see when he's ready to drop into this next record, and I need to feel when he's gonna stop.
I gotta feel it, and I
have to feel it
when it's about to.
Because now at this point, on a technological side, I gotta make sure I cue Serato correctly to make sure certain things are coming together. So that's the beautiful thing, is that it's this negotiation between the situation, the actual subject, and the next step, and what you want the next step to look like. So I find that the slip itself and the human nature element of the slip doesn't necessarily matter as much as the next step of what's to come. So that's personally my process.
And you touched on something really interesting there, because you talked about repetition, rehearsal, iteration. So one of the things that I definitely want to kind of touch on is, you know, we freestyle, but we have structure to that, you know? And I say we, and I mean everybody in the world, right? So like we've already established that essentially everybody's freestyling in their own way, especially right now in a crisis situation or in a difference of kind of normal everyday routine. But when it comes to the preparation to be able to freestyle. That preparation comes as a result of whatever practices that you've put in to know how to be ready for something. If this happens, okay, I'm gonna do that. If this happens, all right, maybe. If you've never in your life prepared for what's about to happen, there's still something in your nature intrinsically, because we have perhaps, and I don't want to, you know, blow up anybody's kind of like worldview, but we have at least thousands of years of evolution and of DNA kind of storage, right? Of, you know, people freestyling, you know, improvising, figuring out something new, learnings, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and all these things combining in your DNA that you may not know is something that you can express until you're backed into that corner where you have to now come up with a new way to express. And where do you go? You go internally. You go, well, what does my heart say? What does my gut say? What does, you know, what does my mind tell me? Or how can I kind of take a little piece from over here and then take a little piece from over there and say, like, for instance, with the DJ, right? The DJ has to listen to you and draw from experience of rappers going a cappella and saying, okay, I know that when a rapper spits a mad crazy bar on stage and everybody is like going, oh, there's going to be a little bit of area in there for me to kind of like do a little bit of like low rubbing, because I know that it's going to take some time for everybody to settle down. The person that's rapping has to continue to spit because what they're saying is important, but I just spit a bar, so yo, I'm going to let it breathe for a second. So, you know what I'm saying, or whatever.
Yeah, that's correct. So, and it's crazy because even with a child, so when a child is working to take their first steps, they're freestyling because it's a negotiation between, I've never done this before, and now I'm in a position where I'm negotiating with the space that my legs are going to be able to. So that's where it kind of gets embedded into who we are to really take risks. Because there's this innate human curiosity that kind of sparks when we're in a situation where we're faced with something unfamiliar. Right? So this unfamiliarity and the idea and the concept of being broken is something that certain people don't necessarily take to. Well, everyone takes to it differently on different scales, right? So in a way, I see
broken
that
in different ways. Broken in the it's essentially I'm breaking out of a mold that I'm currently in. I'm breaking in the mold of right now. I'm breaking out of the mold of right now into a new mold for tomorrow or for the next growth point of whoever I'm going to become.
Right, correct. And the thing is like, and it sounds very visceral. It sounds very not necessarily negative, but it sounds something that's unyielding. It sounds like something that's really painful. But when you're an artist, or not necessarily when you're an artist, when you're a human being, the idea is things must break apart for new things to be able to grow. In fact, the way cells expand, they break apart, literally on a cellular level. So everything needs to ultimately get posed with do you want to expand? If so, a piece of you is going to have to go to either leave a gap for a bigger thing, or that piece of you that you let go is going to go off and become something even bigger and maybe a duplicate of where it originally came from, right? And so that's where the expansion's at.
Yeah, and that speaks to, you know, getting outside of music, because I know there might be some folks who aren't necessarily music creators, but thinking about it in terms of breaking as a cell. Remember going back to that cell analogy of the human body that I was talking about, where, you know, individual people are parts of cells that are kind of groups of individuals or groups of people that become the larger body of the human civilization. So we sometimes break up with each other. You know, it might be two people in a relationship.
Right.
And
See, that's
break.
See, bro, you
break, right?
You're spitting
and
right
so,
now, bro.
So sometimes to go to your point, sometimes you have to allow for the break to happen, however painful it might be. Because you need that space to grow. You need that space to realize I was in a thing that maybe wasn't allowing for me to grow the way I needed to. And breaking apart from it allowed that thing to grow and allowed me to grow on a separate level. So I think definitely there's levels of metaphor in just regular conversation that we're having about freestyling, the idea that life is a freestyle is a metaphor that essentially applies to everything. Everything, anything that you can think of, it applies to that in some kind of way, because in order for it to get to where it's at, it had to either be broken or and reconstituted, or it had to figure something out. If it's a living being that's sentient, it had to, you know, ladies AIT got to catch the virus to get the cure. And by catch, it's not necessarily that you have to catch it within your body. You may have to catch it kind of in the sense that like it's a bandit, you know, on a runaway kind of train type of thing. You have to go find it so that you can put it in a lab, so that you can study it, so that you can then develop the cure.
Could one say that a successful freestyler is someone who's become a master of the temporal, a master of the moment? In fact, and owning the moment for what it is. So a lot of people kind of buck back when it comes to things not necessarily going their way, right? And they say, man, and they rack their brain considering that. They're like, man, things didn't go according to plan. But some of the most successful people, as you aforementioned, rules are really meant to be broken. As Lady ZIT had mentioned right here in the chat, we're put into a situation where you have to own the negative to be able to overcome the negative and then transmute that to a positive. Otherwise, that negative is just going to be a stale negative.
That's right.
And unless you match it with something that's going to overcome that and adapt that situation, it's the same thing as being on stage. If I slip on a word during a verse and then maybe I don't come up with a separate word to be able to fill that space. Imagine you're watching somebody on stage. We have some more people coming in. Imagine you're in a position where you're on stage, right? And you're performing whatever it is you're performing, or you're in that conference room, you're performing whatever it is you're performing, or you're on the dance floor and you're performing whatever it is you're performing, on the swim team or whatever, you're literally freestyle strokes, like regardless of whatever you're doing.
Martial arts. We talked about that being a freestyle. Jeet Kune Do, for instance, Bruce Lee.
That's correct. It's a negotiation between two separate fighters with your hands and feet. It's still a negotiation. And so what's interesting is that you find yourself in a position where you feel as though this is what needs to happen. This is what needs to take place. But it also pulls you out of, I think that's me. I think we're all good though. Yeah, so it pulls you out of a situation where you understand this is where I need to be. I need to master the moment, and I need to take another step towards understanding and wrapping my head around how do I master this one situation. If I'm on the stage and I'm spitting what I'm spitting and I can't memorize a word, then I'm putting myself in a situation where do I stop? Imagine an artist you love performing, or somebody who's performing in a conference or any of the things I aforementioned. Imagine if they stopped completely and let that error and let that gap entirely consume their mind. And they became a victim of this thing, not dissimilar to what Lady ZIT was mentioning. If we become nothing but a victim to our circumstance and don't look for a cure or a solution to our situation, then how can we ever put ourselves in a place where we can overcome and become basically upgrade and evolve to the next level of what it is to freestyle within the context of this situation, right?
It's like a video game. It really is like a video game. You have to get past that level. And sometimes if you focus on the fact that you keep dying at this one point, you're never going to figure out a problem around that point to get over that gap, to get over that spike pit or whatever it is, to get to the next thing. It's interesting that you brought it there, because it's interesting that you brought it there though, because like in the midst of tripping up or having to improvise when you weren't ready to, in the midst of having to figure out your situation when the bills are due and you don't know what you're gonna do. Focusing on the negative is literally going to be the downfall of the outcome. The outcome can be positive if you figure out what to do. It can be figured out. Anything can be figured out. Anything can be figured out. We've apparently gone to the moon. We've apparently, developed, quantum quantum mechanics to the point where we can do all these interesting computations and stuff like that. So if we can do all these things, we can figure out anything. We as a human race, as a body of humans, right?
Right.
So I think that's extremely important for us to not focus on the negativity, because the negativity is just a problem to be kind of gotten past, a problem to be overcome. And we have to overcome these problems, or else what's the point in even being here, right?
Right. As long as you know, there's a solution to the problem going into it, which I think is another thing.
You have to.
Much like, and I'm not saying that children who are just learning to walk know in their head that I'm eventually going to learn how to walk. It's the thing that's coded within us that says, I have this silent belief that there's an other side to this gap.
Here's some crazy stuff. Here's some crazy stuff right here. There's a Netflix documentary called Babies. I don't know if you've heard about it, but one of the episodes, basically they talk about like what happens during the first few like weeks, months, and years of a baby's growth, right? So one of the episodes they talk about walking, and like they document multiple families as they go, as their baby kind of goes from like crawling to kind of standing up to walking. And one of the things that they did an experiment where they did it very ethically, but they held a baby, put them on a treadmill, a baby who had never walked before. And they moved the treadmill extremely slowly. And what they found was that there is an internal understanding of moving the legs for babies that have never walked before. These babies then went on to not walk right there after they did this experiment, but of course, as they naturally would have come along to walking in the first place. But to do the experiment is to show that there is already something built within us. And it goes to show that there's a lot of stuff that maybe we don't understand that we may be capable of, that if you just put us on that treadmill and hold us.
Imagine that. I mean, you struck on a crazy, crazy nerve where, and I'm sure everybody who's watching this, like who's also smashing the like button, which we appreciate, is putting themselves in a situation where they realize, wow, I'm in a place where if I don't present new things into my life, if I don't put myself in a situation where I'm uncomfortable, I call it the comfortable edge, right? You find yourself in a position where you put yourself in a place where you normally wouldn't put yourself. Like, for instance, you know, when we freestyle or when we put ourselves in a situation that's uncomfortable, sometimes we want to retreat back within ourselves. I can definitely say from first person experience, sometimes when things get difficult, that's exactly what I want to do. Sometimes you don't want to be seen. Sometimes you hide, you know, and you find yourself in a place of, man, I'm not ready. But it's the aspect of not being ready that's going to put you in a place that's going to set you up to unlock things that you didn't know that you were ready for until you were in the room, until you're presented with that treadmill. A lot of times there wouldn't be any motion, because when else would that baby be upright other than when being presented with a situation from an external circumstance? The only difficult thing is a lot of people aren't necessarily in a place where they're brave enough to be able to put themselves in that situation. But what's beautiful about this specific moment right now, and everyone being able to be inside and kind of facing themselves and not distracting themselves with other people for the first time in a long time, it's really presented this kind of thing where I could say, wow, here laid out in front of me, as hard of a bullet this is to bite, here are the problems. Here are the things that require some refinement. And then now we're put in a place where we can actually work to assess the problems. Because the first step is knowing what's wrong. A lot of people don't know what's wrong because ignorance is bliss, right? But at the same time, you put yourself in a place where now you're expanding upon the things you realize that need to be fixed, and are not putting yourself in the detrimental situation of now we mirror nature, which is I'm constantly distracting myself with other circumstances and variables to put up this illusion that I am perfect. To put up this illusion, this silent elitism, which is the ego that lives within us, right?
But do you think that that's taught, or do you think that that's definitely within us? Like, you think that if we didn't live in the current society, that, because like, I think it's fair to say that society as it has been built up to this point is currently broken. It's like it doesn't work well enough for us to be able to like prosper through this time and maybe even eradicate the problem quickly enough? Like, right, we're still kind of like dealing with it. So do you feel like that's an ego thing, or do you feel like that's a systemic thing, or is it a little bit of both?
I frame it like this. This is the way that I look at it. Is ego is something that is naturally within us, and it acts as one of two things. Think of Captain America.
Okay.
I can attack with it, and I can defend with it. It does both.
Okay.
Right. So I'm putting myself in a situation now where I need my ego to preserve myself. So when I see someone doing better than me, I don't think I'm worth nothing.
Yeah.
First of all. So it's a defense mechanism of me speaking internally to myself and say, you know, Greg, there's potential for you to get better, and there's potential for you to get better in your way. Right? Just because you see them doing what they're doing doesn't necessarily mean you can't be happy for them. Be happy for them, but also know that there's more work you need to do, and don't get up from your desk until you're done. Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done. Right? And
that's
so,
a ball right there.
So in a position like being in that position, it's like that's one aspect of it, and then the other aspect is being able to attack with it. Because when you're in a position where you have an actual platform to actually display whatever it is you do, this is what made some of the highest level, highest retention athletes. This is what made all the people that we aspire to be like, all the maximized, optimized versions of what it means to be human, have worn their ego on their sleeve and say, when it comes time to do what I am here to do, I'm willing to level anything around me. Because the thing is, any Michael Phelps, any Kobe Bryant, any Michael Jordan, and any legend that you know, anybody, right? Any artist that you know, Picasso was like, yo, listen, I'm saying when it, like, certain people are like, hey, when it comes to juggling, like Picasso's like, when it comes to juggling, shit, I don't know, you know what I mean? But when I put this when I put this in my hand and I go, no one can tell me anything. Right. And that's the main thing that I try to focus on when it comes to internalizing where I fit in this world, is opening up and adding more tools to the toolkit of
for that one specific thing that you're trying to be a master at.
These are the things that I feel like I am above average at. Here's the way I feel like I can change the world for the better. Here's the way I feel like I can put on display what the highest forms of the human capability are within the grasp of what I'm capable of. Now let me work to make sure that that level is continuously more refined as time goes on. Right.
And that's the foundation too. That's the foundation, because we were talking before about kind of having structure to go along with that freestyle, right? So in the case of, putting the structure as here's the toolkit and here's the goal. So I'm going to take this toolkit and I'm going to chip away at the goal. And if I get hit with a curveball, or if I get hit with something that I didn't expect, I still know the foundation is that what I'm trying to do is to get to this goal. The foundation, there's a structure around it. So if it means that maybe I have to take 5 years and go into corporate America and do something that I maybe didn't expect to do, so that I can come back with some money saved because I was, doing, white collar business or what have you, and I can come back and be like, all right, boom, I can take some money and put this into the thing that I was trying to do. Or if it means, speaking with my family on a regular basis, because I know that later down the line, my family being more in tune with where I'm at is going to put them in a position to be able to support me, because then now they know how they can support me. And it's building that structure into your life so that you can then say, okay, grandma, hey, remember when I told you about that thing? I'm doing that thing now. Like, so what's up? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a freestyle, but it is a structured freestyle. So I think that's kind of the thing to take away from this, is that structured freestyle is really how, how somebody that may not look at things through the lens of rap, or may not look at things through the lens of complete improvisation at all times, because that's definitely not realistic either. They can still see that, hey, there's going to be some structure to what I'm doing. So when people say freestyle, it's the style part is where the structure comes in, because it's a thing that has rigidity, because you have to account for, well, what happens when this situation and what happens when that situation. So it's definitely, you know, something that you kind of have to have internally, tacitly understood, like Lady Zati had so eloquently pointed out in the chat.
Right. And I'm actually curious. Like, I'm curious. So what's next for this platform? What's next for Life is a Freestyle? What's the intention behind this? Because I would love for the people in here to at least get an idea as to what Life is a Freestyle has really set forth for the future. What some ideas, at least the podcast component, at least this conversational, interpersonal component. What can people expect coming up? Because I would love for people who are watching this to say and follow kind of the journey of what's going on with Life is a Freestyle. So if you're here and you're listening and you haven't followed Life is a Freestyle, there's going to be amazing things that are going to be coming with it. There's going to be amazing developments, and we're all growing together, and we're all getting better, and we're all refining. And so, feel free to follow that journey, and it's a great project.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, first of all, to kind of piggyback on the last thing, is like styles upon styles upon styles is what we have, right? So that's the first thing. I you know, shout to Fife RIP, but I would say that, you know, we have facets, just like the human experience has facets. This metaphor of Life is a Freestyle, this movement by us is a multifaceted kind of expression that we're trying to make sure can hit all these different kind of areas of the human experience. So the podcast, or the kind of like live stream kind of Q&A thing that we're doing right now, is one element of it. We have something coming up on Fridays here on IG called you know, Freestyle Fridays. We're going to be bringing in guest speakers to do kind of what you're doing right here. We're gonna try to do it every Friday. We're gonna 100% try.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, I'll be right here. I'll be right here in the crowd to watch that. So every Friday there's gonna be a podcast with.
Every Friday we're gonna have a live stream on IG where we're gonna bring in a guest, and we're gonna interview them and talk to like we're doing with you. We're gonna basically say, you know, what does it mean for you to freestyle through either this time, or as who you are in your daily life, or in your career, or in your family, or whatever it is that person is very specifically, you know, being called to speak on. You know, we want them to kind of speak on that element. And so this Friday, we will have the illustrious Osiris Anthem, winner of the end of the week, you know, tournament. I believe it was end of the week, EOW 19, the world tournament that they had. He did some amazing things there, and he's been on the circuit doing a lot of live spoken word and a lot of like, you know, challenges on IG and stuff like that. So we definitely want to get him in, because he is a master freestyler. And so he could speak to freestyle from a rap perspective, because that's where we kind of come from. So we want to have that first, you know, large Freestyle Friday as an expression of, you know, the hip hop element of that. And of course, later on, we'll probably be going into other areas and other industries and stuff like that. But that's for IG. That's for Instagram here and how you're watching this right now. Fridays, approximately 5 p.m. Pacific time. We'll be doing that. And then the other elements that we want to do are going to be also creative, also publishing things like we're talking about doing a zine. We're talking about doing, you know, maybe some crew cuts, because it's a lot of rappers that we have here in our crew. So we're going to be, you know, probably putting a bunch of bars together and seeing how that plays out, and seeing how that affects or how that applies to right now. Like, you know, bars are bars. Anybody that got bars got bars. There's millions of people out there. But how can we use ours to speak on what's happening right now? So like right now we're spitting bars in some cases, and with the metaphors that we're doing and all this back and forth. But how do we put that in musical form? And then how do we put it in the form of perhaps, you know, looking at how it applies to nature. Maybe there's something that we can. So there's definitely elements that we we're kind of keeping under wraps for right now. But you can follow us on all social media. All social media for the most part. We're probably going to be expanding to like the Triller and some other stuff as well, perhaps. I don't know. But I definitely want to make sure that it's organically growing. And I know that a lot of our fellow ITs also want that to organically grow as we kind of, establish this footprint of Life is a Freestyle, and get people kind of on board with this idea that they can be freestylers too. And actually they already are. So, they may not know that they're doing it, but they're doing it. And that's definitely one of the things that we've been taught as a part of the Society of Spoken Art, through that program, thanks to Lucas.
So tell me, tell me a little bit more, because I'm hearing these terms like IT and these things. Like, maybe you can kind of expand for the people who are here briefly about like what that's about, and a little bit about where the core, like where did the Life is a Freestyle platform come from? And why why is it
it's just a mission. It's the whole thing is just a mission, right? So there's missions on missions. The first mission of Society of Spoken Art is that we're trying to learn and teach what it means to be a communicator, what it means to use language to communicate ideas, because art exists not only in the physical space of outside of my dirty window in nature and inside of my my personality, but also in my mind, how I envision things, how I hear what you're saying, and how I paint a picture in my head of what that means. So the art that exists within the mind is what we're trying to encode and decode through Society of Spoken Art, as well as with the Life is a Freestyle movement, with the metaphor that we're trying to express. That is that's just a movement that is essentially us trying to put something out into the world that's actually going to make the world a better place. Metaphors are things that we tend to live by. Shout to Lakoff, and Mark Turner, as well. So we want to make sure that we are making the metaphor more real by talking about it and by painting pictures around how, like, essentially, if the metaphor is something that is this amorphous blob, we're putting a tag on it so that you can kind of see how it exists in space, so that you can kind of have an understanding of the shape that it is taken at a particular point. It might change in a second, but now you'll see it change. Now you'll have an idea of what to look for. And so it's all just this movement that we're trying to do to give people tools, the tools that, like you mentioned, the tools that you have as an MC that allow you to be able to freestyle, the structure that you have as an MC that allows you to be able to say, you know what, screw it. I didn't do what I was trying to do on stage at this particular point, but I'm gonna flip it and turn it into something that makes it beautiful at the end, a beautiful mistake, perhaps. Right. And at the end of the day, we can take that beautiful mistake and we can chalk it down to, hey, this was something that we were able to do to make lemonade out of lemons, right? So I know I'm mixing metaphors, but this is what we do.
Yeah, for sure.
And so stay tuned to the social media at Life is a Freestyle on Twitter, at LifeIsAFreestyle.
LIFS.
And we'll also LIFESA Freestyle, yes.
Okay.
And we'll also be trying to expand to maybe other social media platforms in the future as well, in the near future. And we have a lot of things that we're cooking up. Like I said, it's many facets to this. And as things grow and organically kind of mature, we'll see a way of this kind of turning into something that is more tangible, more tactile, and also more beautiful in the minds of the people that we're helping to, kind of paint these pictures for. So that's what it is, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, shoot. I mean, I'm definitely like really appreciative, of your time, and I'm really appreciative of this platform. And I'm definitely, I'm gonna be tuning in on Friday to see what's good with that conversation. I mean, I have a reason to believe that everyone can relate to Life is a Freestyle. I feel like a lot of times some of the most beautiful moments are the beautiful accidents that we go through, the mistakes that we never thought would ever occur are some of the most.
We got 10 seconds. They about to cut me off on Instagram. I got a little things reading.
Handle it.
I appreciate it, GREGNWMN. Thank you very much, and we'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.